Hey, hello everyone. Welcome to Sustainable Work. And I have my wonderful friend Lisa Philyaw here with me today. Lisa has a master's degree in industrial organizational psychology and is a certified life coach. She specializes in helping career professionals create confidence, manage anxiety, and get out of their own way so they can fully trust and show up as themselves at work. Her background includes coaching and facilitating sessions for corporate professionals, leaders, and entrepreneurs. Lisa's mission is to help others build trust in themselves and take action in their career from a place of self-confidence. And I wanted to share that Lisa and I graduated from the same master's program in industrial organizational psychology. And so this is how we met. And Lisa actually was my coach for some time in graduate school and also when I was stepping into my professional career. So I, on a personal level, know how much value Lisa's coaching really can bring. So I'm happy to have her here. And yes, so Lisa, if you just want to tell us a little bit about your work and what is it that you currently do.
Of course. And first off, just want to say thank you for having me and for putting this together. I think this is something that can be so valuable to people no matter where they're at with their work or for companies as well. So really appreciate you putting this together for everyone. So thank you. So yeah, what I do is I'm working with people in their career, helping them find their confidence, helping them to figure out what it is that they really want and then how to make that happen and to show up fully as themselves in their work. I don't know about you, but there was a time when I felt like I had to put a mask on every day going to the office, and you can wear it for a little while, but there comes a point where it just doesn't feel right anymore, or it's no longer sustainable, which is so
Right.
topical for today. And you need another way. And so
Yeah.
I help people figure out a way to be aligned with themselves in that workplace so they can keep going. And I think it will be able to fit in well with everything that you're bringing with this summit here.
Great, thank you. So if you could speak a little bit about what is that when you worked in a corporate environment, you said you had to put a mask on and that led to you working on sustainably. So what were the factors that were contributing to that feeling?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'd like to say it was the company or it was my team. And I mean, there's things you could point to, but really what it came down to is I wasn't letting myself be me. And so I had a lot of rules about what I thought it meant to be a good employee or a productive employee. And they included things like never letting the team down, always showing up, uh, staying late, taking it for the team, you know? So nobody would tell me to stay late, and I would just be staying late at work, not for the joy of the work, which is completely a different motive, and if that works for you, go for it, but more so from this place of feeling like I couldn't leave, like I had to be there, I had to show people that I cared, that it was important to me. I would I would even do this thing where I would have a bunch of work I'd planned to do, and I would do it and stay late, and then I would save sending an email to my, I don't even like sharing this. I would save sending an email to
Okay.
my boss until the last minute because of the illusion then that it would put out like I was getting credit for staying late. And if
Mhm.
I waited till the last minute to send the email, then I got that much more credit. So I would do all the other things, then send the email just about something else, but as a hint that I was still there. And so I think those are some of the factors, and they're pretty self-led. I don't think that's always the case, but for me, it was very much this feeling of how I was supposed to show up, and it was always about how to work harder and to be there for the team, and it wasn't always focused from a strategic place of what I wanted, where I wanted to go, and what made sense for the company also. And there's a way to balance the two together, but I think I was so in my own head about wanting to show up and be really accepted and liked that I was kind of missing that element.
Yes, I can totally relate to what you're sharing. I have done things like that myself.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, how do you think this way of approaching your work ultimately affected how you were showing up at work and your productivity?
So from a productivity standpoint, I mean, it went down the drain because I'd be reading an email so many times over and over to get it just right. So there's a lot of perfectionism there. But I didn't always see it because I just thought, well, now it's just right. But I was missing the opportunity of if I had sent a pretty good but not amazingly crafted email, I could have done these other 5 things that I couldn't get to because I was so focused on the email. So productivity was much slower. And then I think too, not only productivity in terms of output, but quality of work.
Yeah.
Um, if you're going to work worried about whether you're acceptable, I mean, and it wasn't like in my head directly, I was like, I wonder if I'm being accepted at work. It was kind of sneakier than that. It was just
Mm-hmm.
me thinking this was being a good person. What it does is it makes it so you don't actually know how to access your own opinions anymore. Like they go away. You think if I had opinion, I would share it, but you can't even find it because you're so used to looking to what they think, the boss, the colleagues,
Mm-hmm.
that you miss it. And so then the company misses out on it too. They don't get to hear you, they don't get to see you, they don't get to know you, and they don't get to benefit, and you don't get to benefit. So it's lose-lose all around.
And how did that make you feel?
Love that question. There was like this anxious tension in me because I could tell things didn't feel quite right. And so then I would just try to get over it by pushing that much harder. And it got to the point where it was exhausting, where I would be honestly before work crying at home because I didn't think I could keep it up anymore. And I got to the point where I wasn't able to sleep at night because it was so much stress for me that, and so I was deciding whether or not to even continue with that career. And I loved the company and I loved my coworkers, but I just felt like I couldn't fully be me. And I didn't even know what that meant. And I think sometimes we use that phrase, but I don't even think that phrase is always that helpful because it makes it feel like you're not you. We're always us. But when I felt like I couldn't just express what I wanted to express and just like cut off from myself, it made it just so I guess the other feeling would be disconnected. Yeah.
Okay. So, I guess, well, my assumption is that this is what eventually led you to change your career. So if you could speak a little bit to the process, how did it really happen? How did you make that decision and why?
Yeah, so I did eventually change my career. I actually didn't change it quite at that point. I found therapy and then also coaching at that point and stayed in that career to work through it first. And then from that place, switched careers because I didn't want to switch from a place of, oh, well, that's not the right career. Maybe this next one is. Oh, well, that's
Mm-hmm.
not right. Maybe the next one is, because I've done that before where you just kind of hop from job to job looking for the right one. So I knew what I was in wasn't going to be this place to stay, but I did a lot of self-work on the anxiety first, really, and how to, one, be able to sleep at night and work through that. And then two, like, what is it that I really want to give to this world? What is it that I want it to be? If there was no rules, there was a lot of unknownness through that. I don't know if you've read Martha Beck's book. I can't remember the exact title, but maybe we even talked about it before, the Find Your Own North Star. We might not have,
Maybe it
but it's
sounds familiar.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it talks a lot about that space between where you're at now and where you are headed when you don't know what it is. And just the like weird discomfort because you're in the breaking down, you're in the chaos piece because you don't know the other side of it yet. But if you can have the faith of knowing that it's coming and just kind of help guide yourself and notice little indications about what you like and what you don't like and what's working and what isn't working. It's a lot of like listening to your body in that way. And like little tinge of intuition that comes out.
Mm-hmm.
And then from that place, I navigated into a different career and switched that way.
What helped you lean into that faith, because it sounds like something that may not be so easy to do, going somewhere you don't know where you're going, yet still having faith that you're going somewhere.
I would like to say that it was just the faith in knowing that it would happen, but honestly, it wasn't for me. It was more just knowing that what I had been doing wasn't working and it wasn't going to work, and I didn't want to be the person who just threw in the it felt like I was throwing in the towel if I didn't try to make things work where I currently was working before leaving. Then it felt like I would just do the same thing again at the next place. So it kind of felt like a necessity.
Right.
So the feeling driving it was probably a feeling of necessity from thinking, I've got to figure this out. Just got to figure it out.
Totally. I can also relate to that. I've had experiences where the only thing I knew, this isn't working and I don't want to be here. I don't know where I'm going to go, but I know I don't want to be here.
Yeah. So then what was the feeling for you then?
Mm, I think first, it's probably
Yeah.
anxiety, and also a lack of sleep. That's how my anxiety manifests up to this day. So
Yeah.
when I don't sleep, I know I need to pay attention. And then it's, I think the confidence that somehow comes through knowing that I'm going to get somewhere.
Yeah.
Not quite sure where that comes from, but I know that it does show up. And then just trying to find a way, not trying to find a way, but following the path of, I can say, least resistance, but something that just feels good, something that I look at and I'm like, wow, I feel excited in my body. I feel this burst of energy, and may not know where this path will lead me, but I rely on the feeling and trust that I can trust this feeling, kind of like that, I think.
Yeah. Trust that you can trust it. I love that phrase because it reminds us, I think, of the choice of the trust.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're allowed to trust ourselves. We
Mm-hmm.
don't have to do anything to earn it. We don't have to work hard for it. We don't have to wait till we accomplish something. We can choose it right now. So to trust that we can trust, it's kind of like another layer of it, but it's such a great reminder just to know that it's always there if we want.
Yeah, so now you're a life coach, right? And you help career professionals, particularly women, to create confidence and show up at work as themselves. So could you speak a little bit more about how do you help people do that?
Yeah, so I think the best way to talk about this is my husband showed me a comic the other day, and I wish I remembered who it was by, but it's this dog and there's a genie in it, and the dog asks the genie um, to be able to speak because humans couldn't understand him, and so the dog genie grants the dog the wish, and this dog goes to his humans and goes, okay, you guys, now I can finally tell you when I'm staring at you at the dinner table, it's because I want food. And so the humans look at him and go, Duke, we know that you want the food. We don't want to give you the food. And this dog, the scene of the dog, he's just like, what? Just stunned. And I bring it up because that's what our brain does all the time. We think we know the problem. Duke thought the problem was humans couldn't understand him. But when we go down this path and we have the problem that isn't the actual problem, which was that they didn't want to give him the food, that was the real problem. His idea of what he thought the problem was led him down this whole path where he used a genie to get this wish. And he thought that was going to be the solution, and it wasn't, because he had misidentified the problem. So what I help people do is identify the problem. And we get so in our own heads and so down our own path that we get narrowed, which can help when we're knowing where we're headed, or when we have that clarity. But we often get ourselves stuck because we have these stories about what the problems are. Not necessarily always problems, but just what's happening in our life. We don't see it in a way that's completely clear. We see it based on how we've seen things in the past. So what I do is I help them see problem or the path that they're on, and see it from an angle that they didn't perceive it before, so that they can then figure out what they want, so that they can then decide what their next steps are from that place of knowing what the situation really is that they're in.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so sounds like step one or strategy one is to identify what the problem is.
Yes,
Okay.
that is a lot quicker way to say it. Yes.
Great. Yeah, okay, and so what's then?
Yeah, so identify the problem. Step 2 is to not make it into a battle, not to be this, we got to fix it. Because if we get right into fix it mentality, we're always trying to push our way through things. And I think that's where the lack of sustainability can come in too, because you can't sustain this willpower, grit your teeth and bear it forever. You'll exhaust yourself, you'll get burnt out, or your body will get burnt out. Something will not be able to sustain it. So the next step is finding kind of a sense of peace or acceptance, to be like, okay, that's what's happening. That's all that's happening. It doesn't have to mean anything about me, about what's right or wrong. It's just what it is right now. So that step 2 is allowing yourself to have that space of acceptance with it. And a lot of times that comes down to seeing that the reason that you feel the way you feel is because of how you're thinking about the situation you're in, not necessarily the situation itself. So, I mean, as an example, I think to help this come to life, a lot of us have a fear of presenting. we
Yes.
think we feel fearful or anxious because of presenting, but it's because of what we're making that presenting mean, which is often things like, I'm going to get laughed at, I could fail, I might forget my lines. Those are the things causing the stress. It's not the presentation. So one, identify the problem. It's not the presentation, it's the way we're thinking about it. 2, not try to go into battle with those thoughts. It's like, that's just where my brain's at right now. Those are the thoughts it's giving me. I'm not those thoughts. It's what I'm noticing. It's what I've kind of maybe latched onto, but it isn't necessarily truth. So that brings us then to, we'll call it step 3, which is really breaking down that truth. And I love using Byron Katie's approach a lot here with the, is this really true? Just asking yourself, is it really true? Is this really true? Is this really how it would be? And helping to question from that place, because that allows it to break down. And that allows you to then take a new way.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so if I can relate it to my own understanding and experience, is it's like, and to what you were talking about earlier, it's like you're helping, those thoughts are all of the things that are not you, right?
Yeah.
So you're helping people to get through all of that stuff that it's not them, to find them.
Ooh, I love how you just put that. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, and so I guess I have a couple of questions. First, like, what are some of the biggest challenges for people to get to that place of, okay, this is me?
Well, I think one of the biggest challenges is seeing that they aren't the thoughts that they think, and that their thoughts aren't necessarily true. Like, we think our boss is an idiot. That seems like a truth. It's not. It's our thought about it, but we have all this evidence for how our boss has acted like an idiot.
Mm-hmm.
Or we think, I'm gonna fall on my face again, because we have evidence of how we did it again. So
Mm-hmm.
it's hard for us to not just assume that that is reality, because it's been reality.
Mhm.
So it's not always it's not always about like trying to say how something isn't true. It's saying how it doesn't have to continue to be true. It doesn't have to be what continues on just because it's been what's happened.
Right. Yes, I think I understand. It's choosing, right? You spoke earlier, so choices that we can make. It's choosing what is aligned with what I want and who I am, and having the awareness to make that choice. And what sounds like to me, you're helping people to develop that awareness. Okay, you have a choice.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, I know for me, I'm very action focused and go, go, go to the point where the thoughts feel secondary sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And so what coaching with someone does is it presses pause for a moment and you get to see really what's happening, why you're doing what you do. And I know we've talked before about how the way we feel determines often how we act. And there is a little bit of a can't even say that word, reciprocity. They're back and forth. We'll just say it that way with that, where you feel something and you act, and then that refuels that feeling. So if I'm anxious about my presentation then what happens? Well, I stay in my head all night ruminating about how bad it could go or what could happen from that, and then getting frustrated at myself for it. That just causes more anxiety and then also frustration. And then what do? Well, I get even more upset and I maybe pace around the floor a little bit, or sometimes I've like woken my husband up because I'm so panicked because I can't sleep. Well, then what happens? Well, then you feel more anxious and they kind of play back and forth on each other. So if we can hit pause on why we're even feeling that way by seeing what the thoughts are and showing ourselves how it's like what you said, it's not us, it's separate from who we are, and re-showing ourselves. And sometimes we're so in it we can't see it, and that's why that outside perspective, whether it's a coach or a therapist or a mentor, somebody that you can trust, can help you often to see that. Can also be yourself, like through journaling, having a conversation with yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so something that can reflect to you um, what is that you're thinking,
Yeah.
someone or something. So thank you. My next question is, I love that, you talk about this place of self, and like, how do you know, how do I know that this is me? That these are not my thoughts, not my story, but this is my voice. How can I know that?
Yeah. So I think it comes down to how it feels. And do you ever just like when we found out that the earth, I guess not, maybe not everyone believes this, but that the earth is round and not flat, it was like an instant, we just we just knew it. We had data to point us to it. And so we knew, okay, that's what it is. We didn't have to like hold on to the thought, like, but what if it could be flat? We didn't have to go back and forth and deliberate. We just knew because we had outside evidence to show us, oh, that's what it is. So when it comes to our sense of self, the outside evidence isn't as obvious as data or as some picture or something to show us it. So we have to hear and know how it feels and know what it feels like to know what you want. And so sometimes what that means is getting really quiet with ourselves, just
Mm-hmm.
taking a breath, and just often I'll close my eyes and I just look in. And for me, sometimes I can hear it, like it's a voice. And for others, they'll feel it, like in their gut. They just know the answer. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it isn't that clear. And so then what I do is if I really don't know if it's me that's talking or just another thought, though who we are, I mean, our intuition is thinking too. It's a way to think
Yeah.
about it. So which thought are we grasping, intuition or a fear-based thought? I mean, how does it feel? And if you really aren't sure, then sometimes it means taking action, trying something out, and then seeing how it feels.
I love it.
Because that way, then you're doing something, and it gives yourself some more data to then notice how you're feeling, and then ask yourself why.
Hmm. Yeah. And I know for myself, I think I'm more of a feeling person. So I know for me, it's a feeling that I get in my body that is just so clear. That's like, I know this is true. I don't need data. I don't need someone to tell me it's true. I just feel that it's true.
Yeah. Yeah, it's almost like a layer beyond belief because it's no longer
Hmm.
you believing something, you just know it. It's
Knowing.
just
Hmm.
it is. Yeah.
Great. So given everything that we talked about, uh, how do you define sustainable work?
So for me, sustainable work, it comes down to a big part of it is love. And
Love.
I know that can sound kind of frou-frou, but it's so important. It's two things. It's knowing how to love me in what I'm doing, even if I don't like the specific task at hand. If I'm concerned I could make a mistake, if I know that I have my own back, then I can sustain forward because I'm not going to be beating myself up for a mistake. I'll look at what happened. I'll assess what worked and what didn't. I'll look at the process, but I won't make it about me.
Hmm.
And so I think that's one step is the loving yourself through it. And then two is loving what you do. And I think that's a piece that sometimes I forget about because I'm so into, well, you can think what you want to think. So why don't we just think good thoughts about anything? And you really
Yes.
can. But I do believe that when you listen to you and as you learn to hear that even more, you do start to see patterns about what you truly like and want to do and don't want to do.
Hmm.
And so you can help to shape that in your career, even if it's a role you currently don't like. And as a company, organizations could help work with their people and crafting that as well, because that helps to create the love in that way too. Because if you have desire and passion and you can find a way to create enjoyment in what you do, even if it's not like every day feels like you're not working because it's
Right.
work. I mean, I don't think we're looking for the Disneyland of a job here, but if you can find a way to bring the love, and often it comes from remembering your purpose, remembering how this will help. I read an article, I don't remember where it was, but it was talking about a janitor who he came to work with so much passion because he thought about how he was, I think it was either a school or a hospital, but he thought about how he was cleaning this place and how important of a job that was for the people that were going to be there. So he found love in something that many of us wouldn't be able to find a love or passion for. So the more we can bring that and also show up for ourselves and love ourselves through it, the more we can sustain anything that comes our way.
Right. Yeah, I love it that you talk about love. I really do, and I absolutely agree with what you're saying. So my understanding is that then that what you help your clients understand or figure out how do they love themselves and how do they learn to love what they do or find something they love to do?
Yeah, that is often what I'm helping my clients with. And I talk a lot about trust because, and we
Hmm.
talked about that earlier. What I find is there's three pieces to trust. I think of it like a trust triad, and one of them is accepting you. And that's where that love comes in, accepting you no matter what, which often starts with that critic in our head, knowing how to not make that, again, that conflict, and instead creating some sense of peace by getting to know what is that critic's motive here. We think, oh, they're trying to tear us down. But why? And often they're trying to keep us safe or protected or successful. usually they have some motive, and the more you ask them why, the more you can create a sense of camaraderie with that voice. So if we can trust ourselves by knowing we'll be there for us, even when that judger's speaking up, knowing how to work with that judger, not necessarily agree with it, but talk with it and not create a conflict or battle in your head. And then knowing too how to see things for what they are and not mean anything about you. You can trust and accept wherever you're at. So that's one. Two, it's ownership. Taking ownership for you and not other people.
Mm-hmm. I love it.
Not trying to control other people.
Mm-hmm.
I've tried.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Yeah, I have a people pleaser in me, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
not that people pleasing is inherently wrong. I think if it makes you feel good and it's coming from that place, that's fine. But when we do it to try to control how someone else feels, to feel okay with ourselves, or to make them like us, it gets kind of sticky because we can never make somebody like us. But if we need them to like us, to like ourselves, we kind of set ourselves up to not be in control of how we see ourselves. So when we can own us and own our own career path, we can't make our boss give us a higher salary, but we can decide what we accept, what we ask for, whether we stay, what we do about it, what conversations we have. Those are all things we can own.
Mm-hmm.
So that's that second piece. And then the third piece is how to use discomfort for you. To lean into the discomfort that you're feeling. To know how to work with, maybe it's anxiety. So those sleepless nights for me, it's knowing how to be okay that this is the moment where I feel anxious and not go into frustration or beating myself up, but just to sit and think, okay, this is the part where I'm going to feel a little anxious, and just kind of sit with it. And that helps to calm me down because I'm knowing how to use the discomfort as opposed to let it kind of tear me up. So
Mm-hmm.
that's that third piece. So just to recap, one is that acceptance, which we do through that love. Two is the ownership, and then three is that discomfort, knowing how to use it for you and not against you.
So I really want to talk a little bit more about the discomfort piece because I do know I totally understand the process you're talking about, but I also know that sometimes it's hard for me to convince myself that actually I want to lean into this discomfort. And it's like it's a difficult thing to do. So how do you do that?
I think that is such a good thing to bring up because, yeah, when you're in the discomfort, usually for me, my voice is like, ugh, why do we have to do this? I don't want to feel this. This is ridiculous. Like, and so, which just creates more discomfort. And so sometimes it's distracting myself. It's getting up, going for a walk. Other times it's talking just out loud. Sometimes it's taking a breath. Sometimes it's knowing, okay, right now I'm choosing to stew. I'm allowed to stew in discomfort. If I really want, I can sit like this all day. I don't have to try to like allow it and be all woo or what. And I'm pretty into the woo, but when we make ourselves, when we think we have to do something, even if it's, well, let's just use this discomfort for us, it can feel a little unreachable. And I've rolled my eyes at myself before when I'm not in that space. And so then it's, you know what, Lisa, you're allowed to be upset. You're allowed to feel uncomfortable. You're allowed to sit in that space. And then when I let myself do that, it helps the tension to go away and the resistance go away. And then I can actually kind of process through it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes. Yeah, and I think for me, I remind myself that, what is it, 50-50, that negative feelings are going to be there no matter what. And I mean, I can lean into them now or later, but they're not going away. So
Yeah.
might
Thank
as
you for
well.
thank you for bringing up that 50-50. That's I first heard that through the life coach school, and it's that idea
Yes.
of no matter how, I don't know what you would call evolved or even a self-actualized person, we're human. So we're presented situations and life is 50-50, and that we're going to have emotions that feel good. We're going to have emotions that feel bad, regardless how, no matter how aware we are, that's part of this human experience. So we don't have to try to get out of it. We don't have to look for always feeling good. It's more so feeling on purpose. So there might be times when you feel upset and you want to feel upset because you genuinely don't agree with something, or
Yeah.
something happened and you genuinely want to feel sad. So it's
Mhm.
kind of choosing that 50 that you want to choose. That doesn't always feel great.
And I think, when you talked about discomfort, you said that sometimes it's talking things out loud. And that is, I just want to speak to the beauty and the benefit of coaching, because I know for myself, that is something that I want in my life. I have a coach, I have a therapist, and um, it's beautiful because, there was a period of time when I was kind of resistant to it and I was feeling bad about myself for having to have this help. But now I came to a place where I understand that this is what I want. That is not something that I have to do. No one is pushing me to do it, but that is something that I really want because it just feels really good to me to have support like that in my life.
Yeah, I think that's such a great way to do it. And for some, I think too, it's also being in their body. So it's talking it out, or some people go for kind of a run and the thoughts release in that way, or they might meditate. There's so many different angles. So it's trying these things to see what works for you. And it sounds like you found a great balance for yourself in terms of how to help yourself with that.
Yeah. Yeah. So yes, and it's again coming back to what you said about human experience, right? That we are all human, and that way on we all have brains, and that way of thinking and perceiving life is human. So what tools work for you to create results that you want?
Yeah, so I like to journal.
Okay.
And I also am an external processor, someone who I'm very auditory. So when I speak, it's like I hear it and it helps me to process. So I also really like to talk. So sometimes that's, I mean, with my coach, sometimes it's with my husband. Honestly, sometimes I sit in my office. I've done this, and I'll either put record on my phone or on my Zoom, and I'll record a message for myself. Not like to be inspirational, just to like talk to myself. It works. Things come out that
Wow.
I had no idea was wrong.
Thank you. I think I needed to hear that. That is the strategy I'm absolutely going to use.
Do it. Yeah. It really made a difference for me. And then if I think about other strategies, my husband is not like that at all. He's very into walking. So he goes on
Mm.
walks every day. He doesn't say, "Oh, it's for my self help or healing or care." He but that's kind of his release. So,
Mhm. Okay, well, okay, Lisa, this is all beautiful and, a lot of really good and useful information. So, the last question I want to ask you is, what advice would you give to people, three strategies that they can use to create a more sustainable work environment for themselves, work sustainably?
yeah. So strategies that they can use to work more sustainably.
Yes, if you could give three like big ones, main ones that you would
Yeah.
recommend.
I think first one is do an audit of where they're at now. So when I say audit, it's notice how you're using your time and notice how you tend to feel at the end of the day.
Mhm.
So that might mean even like a time chart where you're literally mapping out what you did that day, and then at the end of the day writing how you feel. Because what that'll do is it'll give you insight as to one, how you're spending your time, and is that sustainable? Is that getting you the results you want? Is it working? And two, even if it is working, is the way I'm feeling working? Is that working? Because if you could have both, I'm pretty sure we would want that. So,
Yeah.
and that's what makes it more sustainable. So that's one strategy. Two, let me think what I would recommend. I think it's honestly creating the belief in what you do and knowing why it's important. How is what you're doing, where you're at now, contributing the way that you like? Because it's I hear people say, well, it isn't, this job doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes it's just because we haven't asked ourselves, how could it matter? How could I make it matter? How does it already matter? And whether you like to journal, to talk, just ruminate on it, whatever it is, ask yourself that question, because when you can believe and find that answer for yourself and create that sense for yourself, then you have a reason to get up and go to work. And that can help to make it more sustainable in that way. And then number 3 is boundaries for sustainability. And this was a big one for me about working late. It's knowing what you want and setting that boundary, as in, I'm going to leave work at this time. And I'm going to do it for myself, even if so-and-so says something, even if so-and-so says something. And for me, that meant at first setting that boundary, leaving at that time, and feeling guilty for it. I didn't try to not feel guilty. I just didn't make the guilt a bad thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes, I love the boundaries piece. Yes, and that's kind of like setting that boundary, and because this is what I want, because this will allow me create a life I want and create that fulfillment, right? And that's where, we have results at work, you have fulfillment, and, I also like to think about results. It's not only something we create at work, right? It's other results that we
Yes.
create in the rest of our life are important too. So what are all the results that you want to create, and that will create fulfillment ultimately?
Yes, you're touching on something so important, that balance piece that we haven't talked about here. It probably could be
Yeah.
its own conversation in itself, but yeah, finding that balance in terms of not necessarily equal for every single piece, but what balance do you want for you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Lisa. I loved our conversation, and thank you so much for being here. And you can find Lisa at her website. Was it lisaphilyaw.com?
Yeah, so it's LISAPHILYAW.com. You can find, there's some fun free resources there. I do lunch and learns weekly with different topics on confidence too that are free for anyone interested. So feel free to join in if anyone who's wanting to dive into confidence.
Great. Well, thank you, Lisa. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you having me.
Happy to have you here. Thank you.